Hey everybody, doing another Q&A. This is for 28,000 subscribers, I think, so let's get to it. Oh, but first, I will go ahead and plug my website. It is deepfocuslens.com. I am an artist and I do commissioned portraits and prints, and if that's something you are interested in, you can go to the website below, or if you have a question about a commission or anything like that, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below. Alrighty, okay, what's your favorite fashion moment in film? Oh my God, that is a really hard one because there's just so many good ones. Off the top of my head, and I'm sure I'll think of a better one later, I'm gonna go Grace Kelly in Rear Window. Just fabulous outfits in that. Favorite use of colors in movies? This might be a little bit cliche and it might just be, off the top of my head, but I think Vertigo is a perfect example of that. Suspiria, I think, climax movies like that I think are very cool. What are your thoughts on Kanye West and his music, if you've heard any of it? I think Kanye is a very interesting, very controversial figure, and I think I really like him. I don't always like him. Sometimes I think he's quite insufferable, but I think that's part of being a controversial figure. I think he makes very unique music, and some of it I think is brilliant. And even as a person, I kind of crave controversy nowadays because everybody's just so like whiny and woke and walking on eggshells, and I like that he's not like that. I find it really refreshing when people are, kind of push you to thinking about things. What's your opinion on Bo Burnham, and have you seen Inside? I have seen Inside, and I liked it, and I thought I really could tell that he put a lot of passion and a lot of work into it, and it was a very unique way to have a Netflix special, so I appreciate the creativity. His style of comedy is not necessarily, my favorite. I'm not really a big fan of like comedy songs, comedy musical genre. Not always, but just by and large. There were things about it that I think were very powerful, but I do also think that people are, talking about it like it's a masterpiece, and I don't think I necessarily agree. I do think it's very well done. I don't think it necessarily offers anything that interesting about this kind of existential crisis we're having and this like isolation moment that is the pandemic and was 2020. I don't know, it just felt kind of like a, 2020 sucked, am I right? And I get really tired of people summing up the pandemic in such a way. I think it would be very refreshing to look at it from a different perspective, from an evolutionary perspective. Oh, what are your thoughts on the actor Brad Dourif? I've always felt he deserved so much more attention than he has received throughout his career. So do I. I love Brad Dourif. He is really eccentric and really brilliant, and he is very lucky that he's gotten to work on a wide variety of subjects with a wide variety of actors. He's worked with David Lynch, and he's worked with Milos Forman. He was in The Lord of the Rings. He's a wonderful actor, and he's a real chameleon. And yes, I think the chameleons like that. The hardworking actors are always, or tend to be, the most talented and the ones that deserve the most recognition. What is a proper way to begin listening to classical music? Is it better to learn the historical context or just feel the music? Nah, just feel it, baby. I don't know. I think music is very much a sensory experience, and art is just an experience. I like to feel it and not really think too hard initially when I'm enjoying something. And with classical music, obviously I grew up around it ever since I was a baby. And as a baby, I didn't know the historical context. That didn't come until much later. I think, if you respond to something very well, then the historical context kind of comes later or can help you appreciate it more. Who are your favorite MMA fighters and why? My favorite MMA fighter is Khabib Nurmagomedov. I just think he's a monster, and I love his point of view. I love the way he trains, and I just love his whole outlook. It's very mature, and yeah, he destroys. Most famous person you've ever met? I don't know really like what constitutes like meeting someone, but I did shake Obama's hand before he became president. There was like a rally or something at my high school, and they sent us all to it, and I was right on the edge. So I shook his hand, and he said, "Thank you for coming to me." And I know that doesn't necessarily count as meeting someone, but whatever. What's the reason you don't like the orgasm scene in When Harry Met Sally? You've mentioned in a previous video how much contempt you have for it. How do you feel about the movie overall as well? Yeah, I do have contempt for that scene. I think it's a really bad scene. And it's one of those things where it's like out of context. Sure, I guess it's, funny in a kind of very light screwball sense, but in the context of the film, I don't think it works at all. The film is a very specific, more kind of subtle style of comedy, more naturalistic style of comedy. And so to have that scene in the middle of a film like that just feels completely out of place. It's completely out of character for Sally, for sure. And yeah, that rubbed me the wrong way. Motivation suddenly seemed to go completely out the window. That's one reason why I don't like it. Another huge reason why I don't like it is because that's not what an orgasm sounds like. That is like Doris Day acting out an orgasm in a movie in the 1950s. What's very important about that scene is that, she's trying to prove that women can fake them very well, and she didn't do that. I know that the times were different, and I think maybe if this movie had been made today, it could be a little bit more raunchy and really guttural and ugly, the way that a real orgasm would sound, but whatever. But yeah, as far as the movie goes, I haven't seen it in many years. I do struggle with the thesis of that particular film and how it views men and women, but it's just been so long, I don't know if I can give like a really good answer on how I feel about it. But I will say it was, when I was a kid, one of my favorite movies, and I've seen it, probably dozens of times. But really, I feel like in order to give a compelling answer on here, I'd have to view it more through the lens of an adult. Lennon or McCartney? Well, they work together beautifully, like peanut butter and jelly. But naturally, I more gravitate towards Lennon just because he's more the melancholy, more introspective artist. Best Vietnam War movie. I know you just reviewed Full Metal Jacket, which is probably my favorite, but I just saw Coming Home and loved it. I think I prefer the ones that focus on the war's effect on American culture than the actual war. How about you? I think I would agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of films, it's like, I think of like The Deer Hunter is more kind of your standard Vietnam film. And then you've got the films that I think really transcend that, like, Full Metal Jacket, which I, now having reviewed it and revisiting it, I think I've got to add it to my list as some of my favorites. But my number one Vietnam film, without question, is Apocalypse Now. But I think that's because I just admire the ambition of it. I think it just plunges so far into the idea of mortality, as it exists for a mind of somebody who's in war. And it's not war so much in the literal sense. I mean, yes, it is, but it becomes more and more abstract as it goes, where, Vietnam is more the framework for this very psychedelic, deep personal odyssey of facing the ego death. And I think it's extremely powerful. It doesn't fully come together. There is something about the third act that does leave something to be desired. I don't think it quite, forms a conclusion that's satisfying in the way that I think it needed to. But it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and it affects me like nothing else. What would you say is your favorite director/composer partnership? Some of mine are Sergio Leone, Ennio Morricone, Alfred Hitchcock, Bernard Herrmann, etc., etc. Yeah, that's an easy one for me. I got to go with Nino Rota and his collaborations with Federico Fellini. Easily my favorite, and then if I had to do a close second, it would probably be Hitchcock and Bernard Herrmann. Which director do you think has the coolest record collection based on the songs that are in their movies? For me, it's got to be David Lynch. That's an excellent question. Yes, I think David Lynch has a very good musical sensibilities, and I think he's got great taste. He's certainly proven that, and he's done his own musical experiments himself. So yes, I would definitely put him on the list. I might have to go, Tarantino, I think, is a big one. He obviously has a real love for music and is very, very specific about what he uses. I'm going to have to go with, though, for myself, as my personal favorite, I think I'm going to have to go with Terrence Malick. I think that the music that he uses in his music, in his films, there's all kinds of different kinds. It is very versatile, but there's a lot of contemporary, classical, kind of postmodern music that I find to be just amazing, some of those choices. Favorite sitcom? Oh, gosh. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking about my childhood, and I gotta go with Cheers, I think is wonderful. And I have to go with Roseanne, and that exists for my adult life as well. I think it's a very, very underrated sitcom. So there's a lot more recognition, especially those mid-seasons in there before it jumps the shark are just fire. What is your favorite Tarantino movie? I would probably have to say Pulp Fiction, though I would like to revisit Jackie Brown. It's been a few years. Maybe I might feel differently about it, but it's between those two. But as of now, I think I'm definitely going to say Pulp Fiction. Alcohol or weed? Oh man, if you have to ask, I mean, you guys know the answer to that. You guys can answer that question. Of all the sketches and illustrations you've composed, which are you most proud of? Wow. You know, I'm not typically like deeply proud of the work that I do, but you know, I can look at it and go, wow, that's pretty good. Honestly, one, you know, kind of recent, or maybe not recent, but within the last few months, I've done commission portraits before, but the first one I did with my website live and up and running, and it was available to the public. The very first one I did, with that in mind, was somebody who is, you know, a fan of the channel and a patron. And I don't know, he had me do this photograph, and I don't know, for some reason, it just turned out really, really well. I don't know what I was smoking that day, but yeah, I was just really in it, and it has all the things I love. It feels very like kind of 3D. It looks almost like a photograph. And I just, you know, I put a lot of effort into the detail of it, and it wasn't hard. That's another reason I really enjoyed it. I like when things are not difficult. It definitely takes time, but it wasn't hard, and it turned out great. As a secular liberal girl living in the very conservative Bible Belt, how do you reconcile your political and social disposition with your surroundings? Do you ever feel frustrated towards your peers who ideas starkly oppose yours? And if so, how do you cope? Well, I'm glad you put secular at the beginning of that. Because yeah, you know, I struggle very deeply with kind of the extreme left and all kind of the wokeness I find to be really kind of toxic and disturbing. But honestly, even this question, like I find it really strange that, you know, people just automatically, they stereotype Texas and they think that, oh, just because you live in Texas, that, you know, it's just a giant Bible Belt and it's like deeply conservative and everyone's, you know, walking around with holsters. And it's like, yeah, that's not accurate at all. Just like anywhere. You know, if you go out to rural areas, panhandle areas, they are going to be more conservative. And that's true of like any state in America. The major cities in Texas are all extremely liberal for the most part. So if anything, I see too much of the extreme kind of liberal, extreme left that I don't like, the kind of wokeness without any sense of critical thought, all associated with identity politics. So yes, in that sense, I do struggle. But how do I cope? You know, I just do. You know, I don't let things like that really get me too upset for too long, because it just feels like a lot of wasted energy. I try to focus on other things, and if I am going to have a political conversation, I try to be as rational as possible and really ask questions. If you get offended by that, you know, I'm sorry. But yeah, those are the questions. Thank you guys so much for asking. Always, I really enjoy hearing what you have to say. So we'll do another one when the time comes. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll give a shout out to my Patreon supporters. I appreciate you so much. And if you're interested in becoming a patron, the link to support that is below, as well as my social media information. You can watch my videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.